wild end to the first half for Georgia and Texas. A bit of a slog up to that point. Texas with a 6-3 lead at halftime. But that final play, Georgia's trying to throw a Hail Mary. Carson Beck gets hit and maybe injures his hand a little bit, or he was holding his arm in a certain way. Kirby Smart didn't know much or was not able to comment much on that at that point. At the same time, Steve Sarkisian is lobbying referees through Lord Rutledge to call holding on Georgia at some point. So some intrigue here, although y'all tell me in the chat, like I felt like Georgia got mostly outplayed in that first half. And some of it was, I mean, receivers, yes, all of that. You've seen some cornerback play, especially against Matthew Golden and Daniel Harris, not really getting the job done for Georgia. But to me, Georgia's offense not being able to keep drives going. Some of that with the running game, but this is an issue. I'll pull up the stat sheet here. This is the issue of total plays, y'all. And Texas, I mean, this even the gap in this closed a little bit. Texas ran twice the amount of plays that Georgia did in that half. And the cluster of these, like 4 or 5 of those, happened right at the end for Georgia. And so Texas with 42 total plays, Georgia with 21 total plays. The beautiful part, if you're a Georgia fan, is that Texas just outgained you 260 yards to 54 yards. And it's 6-3 on the scoreboard, and you get the ball. So if you're just looking for a ray of hope in that situation, that would probably be it. Clay, I'll bring your question up here. Why do you think that Beck would have enough time to throw a Hail Mary? There's 1 second on the clock. You try to do something with it. I think they practice that all the time, even though Kirby Smart did tell Holly Road that there's going to be wide splits there from the pass rushers and that he has to get rid of the ball. And so he put himself in danger at that point. Fortunately for Georgia, that didn't turn into a scoop and score or something like that. That would put more points on the board for Texas. Because again, Texas offense has moved the ball, hasn't scored a whole lot of points, which is the situation here. Someone says kick the field goal in that spot. Yeah, I think it would have been way too long. Maybe a 60-something yarder. I get that it's indoors, but it definitely would have been a career long for Woodring at that point. Distinguished gentlemen's always in the chat here. We come out and score after the half, and if we score on the drive coming out from the half, we win. And if not, Georgia loses. Maybe, but look, this team, Georgia has found a way to win games that it probably hasn't earned necessarily this season, and it's still a good team. I'm a bit surprised with, and I think I've seen someone in the chat here, Samuel, say the same thing. ETN looks a little tentative, needs more from Nate Frazier. Well, Nate Frazier has 1 carry for 5 yards. I thought you would see a lot more Nate Frazier early in the game. Just with the situation with ETN, so he still has that rib injury, and they've just wrapped him up as much as they can just for the pain tolerance. I mean, it's a very difficult injury to play through. I'm a bit surprised that after not playing for 3 weeks that he was the primary back, and to the point that Nate Frazier in the first half of an SEC championship game, after what was a last month for Nate Frazier, has 1 carry. That seems pretty wild to me. Yeah, Stephen, exactly. Needs to have more than 1 carry. Richard says if they win a game, they deserve it. What I'm meaning is Georgia has found a way to win games when it did not play well most of those games. And based on the first half, you would say that's what's required here. We've also seen this Georgia team just turn the switch, go back to maybe regress to what it is as a whole and the talent on the team. We saw this first half versus second half against Alabama. We saw this even a little bit in the Florida game. Georgia got it together, and then especially Georgia Tech here, even last week. Paul Blanco says the offense is so meh. Yeah, 54 total yards and a half. It doesn't get it done, and 2 total rushing yards, -2 rushing yards. Penalty-wise, Texas has 8 penalties for 80 yards. Georgia, 2 for 19. So maybe that's what Steve Sarkisian is complaining about at that point. I didn't see a ton of turnover-worthy plays. Daniel Harris should have had an interception that he dropped. Carson Beck, though, I mean, y'all tell me, are y'all happy with the performance that you saw in the first half from him? I suppose there's a world here, and we won't know until they do the halftime check on Carson Beck. Is there a world where Gunnar Stockton gets in this game because of Beck's hand or elbow? I doubt it, but Stick D says, "What's there to be positive about that? It's 6-3 and you get the ball at the half. That's literally the only thing. I think Georgia did not play a good half of football, and it is not out of the game in the SEC championship. So, yeah, I would say that that's a positive. That Georgia playing some of the worst football that you've seen all year didn't really get punished for it by Texas, because Texas would get down to the red zone and not make something happen from there. Also had the missed field goal from them." Jonathan says Carson doesn't look like he had the juice tonight. That's his MO, man. That's been the thing with Carson Beck for the majority of his career, that you just don't see a lot of that like competitive fire, but it's there. They say it's all there. I'm curious what he looks like in the second half, especially with how he just got hit there. If he's playing through something here, sometimes we saw this a few weeks ago where when Carson Beck started taking off and running a bit more, it got him into a rhythm. How much does that matter if receivers don't start catching the ball for him? I mean, that's pretty wild to think about. Georgia's offense, the Georgia Bulldogs that have won 2 national championships in the last 4 years, they had one catch by a wide receiver in that first half, and that was Arian Smith for 7 yards. Other than that, it was 3 short passes to ETN. You had Jurasic with a nice catch over the middle. He had another catch as well, and then Oscar Delp had a catch. So maybe Georgia just focuses on tight ends more, but this to me is Georgia has had very few offensive plays because it's been 1 for 5 on third down. And I mean, they had that one early where they just needed a yard and couldn't get it. Texas beat them in the trenches that way. Um, but time of possession, Texas 20 minutes and Georgia 9:58. This is a total plays issue. Texas has had the ball all of the first half. Georgia's going to have to completely change the tempo of what that looks like. Maybe establish some longer drive, but neither team is running the ball, and so that makes it hard to establish the drives here. Alvin says, Dane, do you want to revisit your original take on Carson Beck from last year? Can Carson lead the Dogs to a national championship? This is an infamous one for me, where I said that I didn't think Carson Beck was talented enough to lead Georgia to a national championship. That was after the first game of the 2023 season. And I don't think that this team will win a national championship, so ultimately that may be proven right. But the way that he played at the end of last season probably proved me wrong, if we're being honest, that team was good enough to have won a national championship. They didn't make the dance. They didn't beat Alabama in this game, the SEC championship. If you're looking for another silver lining, just in terms of taking a step back, if Georgia does not play better in this game, it does not totally tank Georgia's season like what happened last year when Georgia had a game like this against Alabama. Now, will Texas find the offensive firepower here to punish Georgia like Alabama was able to last year? I don't know. We'll check that out. But I still think, and this will be all for the post-game overreaction show here from UGA Sports, I still think that whatever happens in this game, Georgia's in a good spot in the college football playoff. If you find a way to win, you're probably going to be all the way up to like the 2 seed, and you'll have a bye. If you lose, and it looks like it wouldn't be a loss that was embarrassing or a blowout, if you lose, you probably still host a home game, because I don't see Georgia dropping below Tennessee, and Tennessee right now would be hosting as well, right? So I think Georgia would be in that 7-8 range if they lose. I know y'all probably don't care a lot about that right now. You just want to find a way to beat Texas and win the SEC. That's Georgia's main goal here. If you have other questions here in the chat, drop them and I'll chat with you about those. Let's go Tom Buffington over on Facebook. What can Beck do when his receivers lead the universe and drop passes? Honestly, the only thing that I think you can do is stay positive and keep going to your playmakers that have done things for you in the past. And so maybe that's one reason that ETN's been there in the past game a little bit. He did have such a good game against Texas the first go around. I think you go to the tight ends more. To me, that has been the difference maker in the last month of the season when Carson hasn't thrown as many interceptions. A lot of these deep downfield passes, if Carson begins to press on those like he did in the middle of the season, don't know that the results are going to be much better. Because look, frankly, these are the receivers you have now. And if Sokovia White or Nitro Tuggle were ready to come in there and play in the second half of a SEC championship, I would think that we would have seen more of them up to this point. So that tells me that Georgia coaches are not comfortable with that situation. We're doing a halftime show here because usually we do the UGA Sports Watch Along show, and a lot of you check that out with Jim Donnan, Rodney Nabulsi, and myself. And we're always glad that you do. We'll be back with the Watch Along show for the college football playoff. But the reason that we're doing it this way is because Coach Donnan is in Atlanta. He's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Roddy's there as well. I hung back and wanted to do some YouTube content with you all, and frankly, I'll just be legit with you. I had a vasectomy on Tuesday, so I'm hanging out, laying low, and getting ready for college football playoff, and no longer populating the world. But we're all good. Too much information for you all for a YouTube stream, but here we go. Do want to thank our sponsors that do support the Watch Along show, so I hope you'll support them here as well. Athens Ford, Morris and Dean, that's a law firm that services Georgia and then up into Tennessee as well. So check them out. Bulldog Snacks, Red and Black Sports Water, and then mybls.com. Support all those folks who support us. If you watch the Watch Along show, you hear a lot about them. Yikes. I think that's in reference to me and not necessarily George's offense, but it could be both. Yeah, same amount of firepower with both frozen peas and bourbon. Man, the recovery's been great. I'm not going to lie to you, but we don't have to talk about that anymore. What questions do you have about Georgia, what it can do? If you're asking, look, all the offensive stuff is going to be the negative things here. I thought Georgia's defensive line looked really good, and that was encouraging, considering that Texas's offensive line and Texas running the ball in the last month since that Georgia game, that's been something Texas has done better in the run game, and Georgia has still stopped it pretty much, and not having to really stack the line of scrimmage there. To me, if there is a defensive concern here, it is that when things are kind of getting out of rhythm for Texas, the go-to play seems to be Matthew Golden against Daniel Harris. And look, we know that when Georgia played Texas the last time, Julian Humphrey was the second corner on the field. Julian Humphrey is not on the team anymore at Georgia. He lost his starting spot. He decided he was going to transfer, and he completely left the team. So it's not an option to go back to him at this point. This is Daniel Harris's show out there, unless I suppose they go with Ellis Robinson. Hey, we have a presence from the stadium. Bobby Andrews does a lot of behind-the-scenes social media content for us, and graduate of the University of Georgia and Carmichael Sports Media Institute, which I'm always proud to tout. Bobby, what's life like in the stadium there?
It is very, very loud. Obviously, no more glass in front of the press box here, so it is extremely loud. So I apologize if you can hear the band on the field currently. Morale is a little low, it appears, from some of the Georgia fans. The majority of the fans here are Georgia. I believe 2/3 is of the approximation from what we could tell. But some booing there towards the end of the half. I heard a couple of moans and groans from Georgia fans, and rightfully so. The offense looks, as a lot of people are saying in the comments, the offense looks slow. Offense looks a little meh. Not looking good. But there's a lot of silver lining, like you were talking about. This game easily could be 9-3, but it also could be 6-6 right now. Georgia was very close to kicking a field goal there right before the half. So I mean, never know how this game's going to go. This is not eerily reminiscent to last year's Alabama SEC championship game, but it just seems like UGA doesn't have what they should have, I guess, coming into this game. But I mean, Georgia's been a second half team pretty much all season, so that's what they have going for them.
Main things that I'm looking for here at the beginning of the second half, Georgia's offense actually has to do more with personnel than scheme or anything else, Bobby. One, Carson Beck, after being down on the field at that final play of the second quarter, is there any effect on him? Does Georgia even have to think about another quarterback if maybe he has an injured hand? It's all presumptuous at this point. But then even beyond that, Dylan Bell came down gimpy a couple of plays before that.
Yeah. Not exactly sure what the status is on some of those guys. I mean, fans at home would probably know more than us up here at this point in time. I would expect Carson Beck to come out and play. I believe that he does give Georgia the best shot to win, and I know that a lot of fans may not agree with that or may think differently. But Carson Beck has been in these moments, and I would expect him to come out in the second half and try and either play through whatever he's dealing with. Dylan Bell, uncertain, but the wide receiver group is going to have to figure something out. I don't know. Obviously, the Arian Smith drop narrative continues to grow.
I mean, it's not a narrative when it just happens, like at some point it's just the facts that he's had
right.
drops.
You're right. You are right. Yeah, it's no longer a narrative. Well, it never really was a narrative. It's just true. But I mean, Jacoby White, people are clamoring for Jacoby White. I mean, I don't know what the solution is to catching the football, but bright spot tight end group has looked pretty good so far. Ben Yurosek getting involved. Just not exactly sure what they need to do to move the ball. They got to move the ball. They have to run the ball. Nate Frazier, ETN. I mean, even Cash Jones, whoever it takes to whoever's going to get 3 yards on a play. I mean, is that too much to ask for? I feel like it is right now with what these running backs have been doing. Well, this offense as a whole, honestly.
I'm looking at the screen at the right here. So it looks like they're about to do the Dr. Pepper toss out there. And you'll be happy to know this, Bobby. So Ashley Shamati, the ESPN host doing this, is also a graduate of the Carmichael Sports Media Institute at the University of Georgia. So, I mean, just freaking everywhere.
Cool. Formerly, I believe, Hornets and I believe she used to be sidelined for Hornets or Fox Sports or something like that.
It was,
I'm up there in Charlotte.
Bally's in Charlotte, and then some stuff with CMT. But that's all some sports media stuff that you and I can nerd out about. Did you look at either of these teams in the first half and say, this is probably unfair to put it this way, neither of them looked very national championship worthy to me, specifically in that half? And so as bad as things were for Georgia, I looked at Texas and said they moved the ball, but they squandered a ton of opportunities that national champions do better. Did you have the same read on that?
Yeah, Texas is going to have to convert if they want to, especially against a team like Georgia. This Georgia defense is really good. I mean, they've been keeping them in this game. Of course, like you mentioned, Texas kind of squandered their opportunities, but give Georgia credit where credit's due. I mean, they come up with some big stops. Of course, I was tweeting about this earlier. It's you're riding the wave with this Georgia defense where it's a sack or a tackle for a loss, and then it's a 50-yard gain for Texas. They give up a big play. So it's all about riding the wave, and then when it comes down to the wire, either Texas shoots himself in the foot or Georgia's defense gets a big stop. But yeah, I mean, Texas, we'll see what they do in the second half. Penalties has been an issue. Like I said, shooting themselves in the foot. But Georgia's defense has been keeping them in this game very much so. I didn't necessarily expect a 6-3 game. Texas very much so could be ahead by certainly more than this, and probably should. But yeah, both these teams not looking very national champion contender as of right now. But then again, it could be some sort of false lens that we're looking through because these are two very good teams, two of the top teams in the nation. So it's really tough to say when this is the SEC, this SEC championship game. It's the biggest game of the year in the SEC, and both these teams have a lot to play for, and they're out there playing their best ball on both sides of the ball, and it's just, I don't know if offense is sluggish or if defense has been pretty darn good. It is tough to say, although offense has looked sluggish. I will say that.
One thing that I thought was both teams very much seem to be committed to stick with the run, even though it's not really working for either of them. And some of that just comes with wanting to be balanced on offense. But I wonder, with the way that the game played out in Texas, to where Georgia had short fields based on turnovers, and that really helped them to be able to score points there. But Georgia also in Austin had so many turnover itself. Carson Beck had 3 interceptions in that game. And so I wonder if both teams just came in and said, look, we're just not going to beat ourselves in this situation. And if they both did that as a standstill, I mean, Texas was a little more aggressive in the pass game than
Absolutely.
Georgia was able to be here in this first half of the SEC championship. But when you get a 6-3 halftime score, usually that's two teams that are, I'm not going to say that they're trying to not lose it, but they're not going out there trying to win it in the first half and put you in a 30-point hole.
Yeah, I think Georgia was playing pretty conservative in that first quarter. We saw only a few deep shots. Arian Smith, a couple opportunities there. He did draw a penalty on one of those. I would expect Georgia to take more deep shots, especially trailing in this one. They're going to have to figure something out on the offensive side of the ball. Look for deeper shots in some capacity. I'm not sure if that's going to beat Arian Smith, considering his dropping issue. But they're going to have to move the ball, and Carson Beck is – he makes it, he throws when it matters. We saw him do it against Georgia Tech. And so I'd expect Georgia to fight their way back and, heck, even score a touchdown on their first drive, possibly. I'm not going to promise anything, but I'm looking for them to come out fighting and potentially take a lead here and try and have their defense give their defense an opportunity to get another stop and keep them in this game. So,
If you could promise that, you were in the wrong line of work, my friend.
yeah.
There would be some sports gambling that you would be hopping on at this point. This second half, to me, I just think it's going to feel very different from what we just saw. I don't see a way that Georgia's on pace to have 108 total yards. I mean, that's not going to happen. And so,
Yeah.
But Texas also is scoring what on 130 yards, 3 points per on that. So 260 yards, 6 points. So that's not great either. So I feel like both teams will probably settle in a bit more, and this will turn into a higher scoring game than we expect. Just because I can't see a world where 12-6. There's too many changes to have happened here. There's too many good coaches and too many good players in this game.
And both these teams, they have really good offenses. They just haven't looked that great today. And as I mentioned, it could be, defenses are playing good, but also they're just playing sluggish or conservative. Not exactly sure what it is, but they have good offenses. They have good quarterbacks. Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers are fully capable quarterbacks, projected top, first-ish round talent guys. So, there are going to be opportunities for them to throw the football. There are going to be opportunities for them to make plays. Texas right now has shown that they can do it and are willing to do it. Georgia's going to have to prove it in the second half.
Are teams back out on the field in front of you at this point?
They are, yes. Yep, they've taken the sidelines, and officials are out at the center of the field, so getting ready for kickoff here for the second half.
Cool. Well, I know you have work to do on social media and coverage for UGAsports.com, but I do appreciate you popping on. I may stay on another second until I see the game begin here and I get a few more comments in, but I appreciate you, Bobby.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep. Bobby Andrews. What a guy. Does a lot of good work for us on social media. I'm going to stick with y'all for just a second here until I see actual game coverage come back here. Oh, thanks for the love here. I appreciate that. We've really built this YouTube channel to be something that is a really cool community. And we've done that with UGAsports.com right at the heart of it. So thank y'all for supporting what we do. And again, support the people who support us. And on the watch along show, which again, we're not having today, we usually do, but Jim Donnan's in the building in Atlanta. So support Athens Ford and Red and Black Sports Water, Bulldog Snacks, Morrison Dean Law Firm, and mybls.com. It looks like I'm seeing Mercedes-Benz Stadium aerial shots. So I'll just give you final thoughts here as this is about to kick off here in the third quarter. Carson Beck's health and Carson Beck's confidence, I think, will determine what happens with Georgia in the rest of this game. And I'm seeing in the chat, you were saying Gunner is in there. What a storyline, fellas, and ladies and everyone. Here you go. Gunner Stockton, this is your time. This whole narrative just changed because based on how Kirby Smart went off the field, I didn't think that was going to be okay. So we're going to come out, and any of y'all that wanted Beck benched, any of y'all that wanted a different look from Georgia, you about to see what it is, and maybe it gets Georgia an SEC crown. regardless, we have an interesting storyline to follow, and we will recap it heavily on the post-game overreaction show hosted by Paul Meharry. If you like some of the stuff I've said, maybe some of the jokes I've made, and some of the medical procedures that I discussed, I'll be on the post-game show with Paul as well. We're going to get out of here and let y'all enjoy the second half. See y'all after the game. And as always, if you are not subscribed to UGA Sports here on YouTube or like us on Facebook, please do that. And we'll see y'all after the game.